r/NoSleep. I went to the cabin to find my brother. Now I can't sleep without the lights on. They say there's nothing more sacred than family, but sometimes, family can lead you into places you were never meant to go. Looking back, I wish I'd listened to the warnings. I wish I'd ignored the pull of loyalty. But I didn't. And now, I'll never sleep peacefully again. I grew up in a quiet town nestled at the edge of a vast, sprawling wilderness in Alaska. The kind of place where your neighbors were miles away and the sky was painted with ribbons of green and purple on cold nights. It was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. Everyone knew the unspoken rules of the forest: stick to the marked trails, never stay out past dark, and most importantly, don't go near the old mining cabins. Those cabins had been abandoned decades ago when the miners fled, but people whispered about strange things lurking there. My dad would scoff at the tales, but my mom always warned us to stay far away. "Nothing good comes out of those woods," she'd say. I used to laugh at her superstition, but now I know better. My older brother, Luke, was always the adventurous one. He was the kind of guy who saw boundaries as suggestions and warnings as dares. So when he didn't come home one evening after telling us he was going hiking, I wasn't entirely surprised. Concerned, yes, but not surprised. At first, we thought he'd just lost track of time. When night fell, my parents called the authorities, but it was too late to mount a search until morning. I couldn't wait. Luke was my big brother, my protector. The idea of him alone out there, in the dark, terrified me. So I grabbed a flashlight, some snacks, and my dad's hunting knife, and I set out. The forest at night was suffocatingly dark, the kind of black that swallowed everything. My flashlight cast long, flickering shadows, making every tree look like it was leaning in to watch me. I called his name over and over, but the only answer was the distant rustle of branches and the occasional snap of something moving unseen. After what felt like hours, I found his backpack caught on a low branch. My heart sank. I checked it for clues and found his phone, dead and useless. There was also a crumpled map with a circle drawn around an area deeper in the woods. One of the cabins. I didn't want to go, but what choice did I have? I followed the trail as it wound deeper and deeper into the forest, the air growing colder with every step. Eventually, I saw it, the cabin. It stood in a small clearing, its windows dark and gaping like empty eye sockets. The door was slightly ajar, creaking gently in the breeze. "Luke?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer. I stepped inside, and the smell hit me, something rancid and rotting. My flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, revealing a room littered with old mining tools and furniture draped in cobwebs. Then I saw it, blood. A trail of it leading to a trapdoor in the floor. My stomach churned, but I knew I couldn't turn back. The trapdoor groaned as I pulled it open, revealing a narrow set of stairs leading into the earth. The stench was even worse down there, and the walls seemed to close in the deeper I descended. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. The walls glistened with moisture, and the air was heavy with the sound of dripping water. That's when I saw him. Luke was sitting in the center of the room, his back to me. Relief flooded me, and I rushed forward, grabbing his shoulder. "Luke, thank God. Let's get out of here." He turned to face me, and I screamed. His face wasn't his. It was stretched and contorted, his eyes sunken and black as pits. His mouth hung open, far wider than it should have, and his teeth, dear God, his teeth, were jagged and yellow. "You shouldn't have come," he rasped, his voice wet and unnatural. Before I could react, something moved in the shadows behind him. It was enormous, its body twisted and wrong, with limbs too long and skin that glowed faintly in the dark like phosphorescent fungus. Its face, or what I assumed was its face, was a gaping maw filled with needle-like teeth. It moved with an unnatural, jerking motion, its body clicking and cracking as it crawled toward me. I froze, paralyzed by terror. The creature loomed over Luke, its claws resting lightly on his shoulders as if he were a puppet. He smiled, an awful, hollow smile, and whispered, "Run." I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted up the stairs, my flashlight bobbing wildly as I stumbled through the cabin and into the forest. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road, where a passing car found me shaking and covered in dirt. The search party found no trace of Luke the next day, nor any sign of the cabin. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but no one believed me. They said I must have been delirious from fear and exhaustion. But I know what I saw. I know what's out there. To this day, I sleep with every light in my house on. Because sometimes, late at night, I hear it, The faint clicking and cracking of something moving just outside my window. And I know it's waiting for me to smile. I thought moving far away would help, that putting hundreds of miles between myself and those cursed woods would let me sleep again. I left Alaska as soon as I turned 18, determined never to look back. I got a job in Seattle, a studio apartment, and a routine. For a while, I almost convinced myself it was over. Almost. The nightmares began a few months after I moved. In my dreams, I was back in that cabin, staring into Luke's empty eyes as the creature loomed behind him. I could feel its breath on my neck, hear its unnatural clicking echoing in the darkness. Then, without fail, I would wake to the sound of faint tapping on my window, even though I lived on the 4th floor. At first, I told myself it was just my imagination. Trauma playing tricks on my mind. But the tapping grew louder, more insistent. One night, it wasn't just tapping, it was scratching. Long, deliberate strokes against the glass. I couldn't bring myself to look. I sat in bed, frozen, clutching the hunting knife I'd brought from home like it would somehow protect me from whatever was out there. The next morning, I found long, deep gouges in the window pane. They weren't random. They formed a single word, smile. The signs followed me everywhere after that. At work, I'd catch glimpses of something in the reflections of the office windows, a tall, pale figure with 2 long limbs and empty, black eyes. In crowded places, I'd hear the faint sound of clicking, louder than the chatter of the people around me. Once, I found a single tooth on my kitchen counter, yellow and jagged, like the ones I'd seen in Luke's twisted smile. I couldn't explain how it got there. I never left my door unlocked. Then, the letters started. At first, they were simple. Short phrases scrawled in spidery handwriting on scraps of paper slipped under my door. You shouldn't have run. It remembers you. Smile for me. Each one sent a chill down my spine, but the worst part was the smell. The letters reeked of decay, the same stench I'd smelled in that cave all those years ago. I reported the incidents to the police, but they couldn't do anything. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints. They told me it was probably a prank, some sick joke. I knew better. One night, I awoke to the sound of my apartment door creaking open. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The knife was still under my pillow, and I gripped it tightly as I listened to the soft, deliberate footsteps making their way toward my bedroom. The smell hit me before I saw it, rotten blood, the same foul odor that had haunted me since the cave. The footsteps stopped just outside my bedroom door. The doorknob turned slowly, and the door creaked open. There it was. The creature stood in the doorway, its head nearly brushing the ceiling. Its pale skin gleamed in the dim light, stretched impossibly tight over its skeletal frame. Its black eyes bore into mine, and its mouth twisted into that horrific, permanent grin. "Why did you run?" It rasped, its voice a wet, guttural sound that made my stomach churn. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My body refused to respond. The creature took a step closer, then another. With each step, the room seemed to grow colder, the air heavier. It leaned down until its face was inches from mine. Its breath was hot and rancid, and I could see the dark voids of its eyes more clearly now, voids that seemed to stretch into eternity. "Smile," it whispered. I don't know how I found the strength, but I slashed at it with the knife. The blade connected, slicing through its outstretched arm. A thick, black liquid oozed from the wound, and the creature let out a shriek that rattled the walls. It stumbled back, its grin faltering for the first time. I didn't wait to see what it would do next. I bolted past it, out of my apartment, and into the hallway. I didn't stop running until I reached the street. I looked back once, and I saw it standing in my window, watching me, its grin wider than ever. I didn't go back to that apartment. I didn't even bother packing my things. I left the city the next day, heading south with no destination in mind. For weeks, I drifted from place to place, staying in cheap motels and keeping the lights on at all times. But no matter how far I ran, it always found me. It appeared in my dreams, in the shadows of my motel rooms, in the reflections of mirrors and windows. It didn't always show itself fully, sometimes it was just the sound of that terrible clicking, or the faint smell of decay. But I knew it was there, waiting, watching. One night, I woke to find the creature standing at the foot of my bed. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just stared at me with those endless black eyes and that grotesque grin. For hours, I sat there, clutching my knife, unable to look away. Eventually, the sun rose, and the creature vanished with the first light of dawn. I don't know why it hasn't killed me yet. Maybe it's playing with me, savoring my fear. Or maybe it's waiting for something, some moment I can't predict. But I know it's not finished with me. It never will be. Now, I live alone in a remote cabin, far from anyone else. I've boarded up the windows and reinforced the doors. I keep lights on at all hours, and I sleep with a weapon by my side. But it doesn't matter. No amount of preparation can stop it. Because every night, as I sit in the flickering glow of my lamps, I hear it. The clicking. The scratching. The faint, wet rasp of its voice, whispering from the darkness. Smile.